you're not starting a company right now to start a company. You're starting a company because you're just figuring out what you want to work on. And this is different. And right. Like ultimately, I think if more entrepreneurs started companies for that reason, basically like just, this is like something I want to do. And then like, again, like sometimes you over rotate, right? Because people are always like, oh, find something you're passionate about. And that's what you get it. And that's also like a little bit cliche. So like what advice or what kind of space do we give to the sort of next generation of founders theoretically that, for us as Microsoft, it's interesting because we have such a great imprint in the enterprise that we'd love to have more entrepreneurs come out of the enterprise also, like that have seen really interesting problems that they want to try to solve that they've had to deal with. But like a lot of people don't feel like they can when they're in the situation that you're in.
The key to a lot of stuff is just being focused, right? Like to your point about the cliche, like find the thing that you're most passionate about and just do that, right? Like that's like half of the advice. The other half of that advice is like, okay, find the thing that you're like really passionate about doing, and then find an unanswered problem in that space that you can make meaningful progress on every day, right? And so it's about like getting focused and not getting distracted and giving yourself like little milestones, little objectives, and talking to people that might be the customers of whatever you're building to make sure that you are building something that they want. They are building something that you need, right? So it's not just like find the thing that you're passionate and do it. It's like find the space you're passionate about and then do a bunch of research in that and then figure out what problem hasn't been solved in that space. And so, I think if you do both of those things together, and you're willing to give yourself the space to explore those things and to pursue them, and the space meaning like hours in a day as well as like months in a year, right? Like that's the formula to doing it. Like I always think back to the early, like when we were just finishing grad school and we almost got jobs elsewhere. Like if we didn't give ourselves like 6 months to just tinker on our thesis project on dodgeball, like it wouldn't had the oxygen that it needed to turn into what it did turn into. But like that was like a weird 6 months where like kind of had side gigs and just kind of doing whatever you could do to get by and make some time to work on this thing whenever you could. But like we needed to give ourselves that time in order to find that thing and make it work.
When you say research on ideas, like how do you go through that research? Like what's the way that you did it with like say Street FC or with Dodgeball or with Foursquare? Because I think that process of customer discovery and research is interesting, right? And I think ultimately that the tweaking and the tinkering in the early stage of like getting that conviction.
Yeah, I would say, I'll tell you what I do is like, I think if you're starting like any product or company in any category, you have to know about every single thing that exists in that category, right? Are you doing the exact same thing as somebody else? Is someone else about to launch something like this? Is someone else done something like this like 2 years ago? You don't have to like, it helps to reach out and talk to those companies or talk to the customers of those companies. And, if someone's doing something in the same space, it doesn't mean you can't do it. But you just like, you have to have the awareness of all the stuff that's been done. And that's what I mean by research, right? Like I carry this, part of what I do is I just talk to a lot of people. I talk to a lot of people that built things in the past. I talk to people that are building things. I talk to people that work in the industry. I always carry this little notebook with me. I take notes all the time about what people are saying and like, oh, did you hear about this thing? And you might want to look at this thing that I heard about like 3 years ago that someone was doing in France. Like, let me write that down and let me research it, right? And I bet you I spend an hour a day going through the stupid stuff that I write down in this book, just trying to trace down like, okay, is this interesting and is it not? Well, at least I know about what it is now. And research isn't just like the one thing that you do, one day out of the year. It's like every single day, like I'm digging into things I hadn't heard about and trying to find if someone has done this thing before and trying to find like what's worked in the past and what hasn't done. It's just like it's just a part of the process. It's like an everyday type of thing. And it's almost like you're like a detective, right? Like you're like constantly out on the street talking to people and trying to find new things and turn over new leaves and just like, just always be curious about what other people are doing in spaces that are adjacent to you.
Yeah, that the notebook that you carry is like sort of like a famous it's like a famous thing that you do, right? Like, and I, like every time I have a conversation with you and you actually write something down, I feel like I like, it's like bingo. I feel like I won something.
I went to a dinner last night, and I've got like 3 pages of notes here, right, from this dinner. And I spent the half an hour before we jumped on the phone here, like going through and being like, sometimes I can't even read what I wrote. I'm like, what does that even mean? But like, 80% of the stuff, I'm like, okay, I followed through, and I don't have to do anything. I just have to like look at it and read it and understand it, and I just kind of commit it to memory. It's almost like you're studying for a test in high school or something. But like that's kind of the process.